At Starbound, we tell stories the human way, not with artificial voices or AI slop. I mean, in the end, what's HFY without humanity? Subscribe to keep it this way. My name is the VoiceOgre, and let's begin. The final report from probe OR-7 was, in the most literal sense, beautiful. Its beauty was that of a perfectly balanced equation, a flawless architecture of logic and data confirming a universal constant with the cool elegance of truth. Dr. Phelan Var reviewed the telemetry for the third time purely for the deep, resonant satisfaction humming through her lanky, multi-jointed frame. On her primary display aboard the Compendium, a Concorde vessel, the data flowed in crisp, serene script. It summarized species 9142, the humans, with a finality that felt like a law of nature.
Fragmented governments, low-grade industrial, minimal coordinated military presence. Threat level negligible.
A junior analyst, Tovin, glided to her side, his own optical sensors fixed on the summary.
A textbook pre-contact society, Doctor. Just as the progenitor models predicted.
Exactly so, Tovin.
Phelan affirmed, a soft internal hum of contentment resonating through her. The rhythm of her life's work pulsed in this moment. The quiet discovery, the meticulous cataloging, the calm addition of another species to the Concorde's grand galactic index.
Recall the Cal Theory hive mind in Ymir 3. Even the decentralized consciousness coalesced into a single command authority before achieving atmospheric flight. Centralization remains the only viable path.
The data on her screen was clear, unambiguous, and slotted perfectly into the Concorde's threat assessment model. A model refined over 10,000 years and 9,141 successful and often tragically predictable first contacts. Her internal monologue, the constant stream of academic self-assurance, reaffirmed the core tenet of her profession.
Of the 9,141 sentient species catalogued since the Great Expansion, all have developed along convergent lines of centralized command. A species achieves global industry only through a global hierarchy. This stands as a law of socio-technological evolution. Species 9142 is a statistical certainty, a perfect fit for the model.
R7, she subvocalized, a final check for procedure's sake.
Run a final probability analysis. Any outliers, any data shadows that deviate from the established model by more than 0.01%?
The microsecond passed. Negative, Doctor. The AI-synthesized voice echoed in her auditory implant. The data aligns with a 99.998 confidence rating. High-entropy data from the species' global network has been flagged but classified by the progenitor model as unstructured cultural noise, a sign of a fragmented, pre-unification society. The thought wrapped her in a comfortable blanket of logic. The model accounted for the chaos and correctly filed it under pre-unification. With a deft, multi-jointed appendage, she tapped the command authorizing the next phase, the landing. The lander, a vessel named Quiet Inquiry, was a masterpiece of Concorde engineering. A smooth, featureless teardrop of non-reflective alloy. The vessel seemed to swallow light and sound, designed for an unobtrusive presence. It descended through Earth's atmosphere with the silence of a falling thought, displacing air without a whisper. It settled in a region the humans called rural Oregon, a location chosen by OR-7 for its low population density, clear atmospheric conditions, and oddly robust proximity to major data hubs. Everything proceeded according to procedure. Phelan observed the new world through the main viewport. The air was a sensory riot. Her olfactory sensors, calibrated for the sterile purity of vacuum and filtered ship environments, screamed with 1 billion organic signatures. She could taste the sharp scent of pine pollen, the complex decay of distant leaf litter, the greasy signature of hydrocarbon exhaust. A chaotic, uncurated soup of life that felt less like atmosphere and more like an assault. Her team of 4 other Lumani analysts moved with the fluid grace of their species. Their lanky forms swept across the sterile deck to calibrate their instruments. No words were needed. They functioned as a single, coordinated unit and executed a procedure performed countless times before. Phelan expected a quiet, controlled observation period,
Or 7. Confirm projected timeline for local authority contact, she requested.
Local government entities have been alerted by their orbital sensor grids, the AI replied. Based on their observed bureaucratic response times, a formal, cautious 5-kilometer perimeter should form in 72.4 standard hours.
72 hours.
Ample time to collect atmospheric and geological samples, to begin the passive cultural observation that would form the bedrock of their final report. The predictability of it all was wonderful. In just under 3 hours, the concept of a low population density area reclassified itself in Phelan's mind as a catastrophic intelligence failure. The first human arrived on a 2-wheeled vehicle that moved with an electric hum, its silence a cheap imitation of Concorde technology. He was an adolescent, his face slack with awe, his personal communication device held aloft like a holy relic. He live-streamed his breathless commentary to the planet's data network, a fact Phelan noted with a clinical shudder.
No way! It's real! It's actually real! Holy dude! It's like Chrome and Silent and stuff. Sub to my channel, guys. I am literally Ground Zero First Contact. What's up?
The feed was a torrent of incoherent exclamations and shaky footage of the quiet inquiry. Then came the ground vehicles. They were loud, inefficient, combustion-powered machines the humans called pickup trucks. Their engines emitted a low, guttural rumble, physically jarring to Phelan's sensitive frame. They parked in a haphazard semicircle that suggested a complete ignorance of standardized parking regulations. A family unit unfolded woven chairs, opened a thermally insulated container, and had a picnic. Phelan watched, her 3 hearts beating in a confused and arrhythmic tattoo, as a brightly painted truck rumbled up the dirt access road. The truck defied classification as a military or government transport. It revealed itself as a mobile food dispensary.
My hypothesis lies falsified,
she thought.
My model collapses. This variable demolishes the entire experimental framework.
A cheerful hand-painted sign propped against its side advertised, "Cosmic tacos, a taste that's out of this world."
Or 7. Identify the purpose of the culinary dispensary vehicle,
Phelan murmured, her voice tight with disbelief. It dispenses culinary items, Hour 7 responded. Analysis of local data streams suggests a commercial enterprise that capitalizes on the unexpected tourism generated by our arrival. The proprietor currently offers a 2-for-1 special on something called the Alien Annihilator Burrito. The expected soldiers and government agents remained absent. In their place, a disorganized, curious, and unnervingly calm crowd of dozens swelled to hundreds. They all held their little devices. They documented the event from every conceivable angle and instantly uploaded their findings for peer review. For the entire planet. Aura 7's audio feed, piped directly into Phelan's auditory sensors, was a chaotic collection of human chatter, laughter, the sizzle of onions in the taco truck's grill, and snippets of conversation that defied all logical analysis.
Did you bring the potato salad, Shirley? Move your truck, Gary. You're blocking the view for the apple bombs. This is better than the county fair.
This is a spontaneous mass convergence,
Phelan murmured, and she sought to fit the scene into her academic lexicon. Correction, Aura 7's voice replied in her ear. Local data streams classify this event as a tailgate party, a social ritual that precedes a sporting event. We appear to be the sporting event. The flimsy yellow tape the local law enforcement deputy erected might as well have been a polite suggestion. The human female, whom Phelan's scanner estimated to be approximately 67 standard years of age, ducked under it, her stride unbroken. She carried a case of bottled water in one arm and a folding chair in the other. Her movements held the unhurried confidence of someone who navigated parent-teacher conferences and school board meetings for decades. She belonged here, and the universe had better get out of her way. Phelan's team tensed. Their appendages instinctively reached for the console and the ship's low-level sonic deterrents. Phelan signaled them to hold with a subtle flex of her vocal crest. This was an anomaly, and anomalies required observation over reaction. The woman, Agnes Periwinkle, according to facial recognition data OR7 cross-referenced with public records, stopped a respectful 10 meters from the lander's ramp. She unfolded the chair with a crisp snap and set it down with purpose. She placed the case of water neatly beside it.
I figured you might be thirsty after your trip,
she called out, the voice clear and startlingly practical. It cut through the ambient noise of the crowd like a focused beam.
Now I'm Agnes. Welcome to the neighborhood.
Phelan activated the lander's external vocalizer. Unidentified female. Phelan's translated voice boomed, clinical and sterile. You have breached a designated first contact sterile zone. Please remain at a safe distance for your own. Agnes waved a dismissive hand.
Oh, hush. This is my backyard. Nothing sterile about it. My name's Agnes. Are you in charge in there?
She squinted at the seamless hull of the ship.
Just so you know, I called our congresswoman, but she's useless. So, I also called Channel 12 News. Their van's got a flat tire about a half-mile back, so you got a bit of time. So I just thought you'd want a heads up before things get a little crazy.
For the first time in her 82-year career, Phelan was speechless. Her extensive first contact training prepared her for every conceivable scenario, but omitted any chapter on polite logistical management from a retiree who offered hydration and a press advisory. A chainsaw had just pruned her entire diplomatic procedure tree.
OR7,
Phelan whispered into her comlink.
Analyze this individual's intent.
A 1.2-second pause followed. Analysis. The individual engages in a standard human social custom known as being a good neighbor. Probability of hostile intent, 0.003%. She appears to manage the situation. Probability, she also offers you a casserole later this week, 48% and rising. Following procedure, even when the procedure felt like cataloging a hurricane with a teaspoon, Phelan authorized the deployment of the observation drones. A return to the familiar, the comfort of routine.
Begin standard passive survey. Sweep pattern gamma,
she ordered her team. The silver spheres emerged silently from hidden ports on the quiet inquiry and dispersed into the Oregon sky to begin their work. To the Concorde, this was a scientific procedure as benign as taking a photograph. OR7's data began to populate Phelan's datapad with sterile, comforting reports.
Initial genetic markers show high diversity. Crowd composition is non-uniform. No discernible command structure detected.
The drones were, of course, spotted immediately. Within minutes, footage of the small silver spheres was posted online from 1,000 different angles, magnified, stabilized, and analyzed by a global network of hobbyists and self-proclaimed experts. The narrative that solidified in the global human data network was a strange mix of outrage at a perceived personal violation and a giddy, crowdsourced curiosity. The hashtag "They're scanning us" trended globally within 3 hours. OR7 projected a curated feed of the human network's response onto a secondary screen. Pictograms with overlaid text appeared, a form of rapid, symbolic communication Phelan found deeply illogical. The sleek, billion-credit Concorde observation drones were being depicted with crudely drawn angry eyebrows. One was shown peering into a bathroom window, captioned, "We've been trying to reach you about your car's extended warranty."
What is the strategic purpose of this pictogram?
Phelan asked, genuinely perplexed. Its primary function appears to be the rapid, decentralized dissemination of a shared cultural attitude, OR7 explained. In this case, ridicule, a method of culturally disarming a perceived threat by rendering it absurd. Phelan and her team watched as their standard millennia-old scientific procedure was interpreted by an entire species as a profound, and profoundly irritating, act of cosmic rudeness.
OR7,
Phelan said, her voice tight.
Report on traffic data related to our landing site.
Data traffic has spiked by 12,000% in the last 3 hours, the AI replied. A significant portion of this traffic is dedicated to a debate on whether our drones violate something called the Fourth Amendment. A new hashtag, Get a Search Warrant, is now trending. Phelan monitored a regional drone feed from a small coastal town 80 kilometers to the west, when the video abruptly whited out. The drone's optical sensors were simply overwhelmed. All 7, are the drone sensors malfunctioning? Phelan demanded. Negative. The AI responded instantly. Sensors function perfectly. They accurately report an output of 1.2 million lumens, exceeding safety thresholds. Reroute visual input to local human data streams, Phelan commanded. On her main display, a new window popped up, showing a shaky phone camera's view of the same town. Phelan watched, her multi-lensed eyes struggling to process the scene. The town's fishermen and the local citizens strung up massive old commercial fishing nets between the buildings, creating a chaotic canopy over the main streets. The nets were made of a highly reflective mylar-like material. They were blinding the drones. The sunlight hit the makeshift reflectors, creating a dazzling maze of light that completely overwhelmed the drone's optical sensors and saturated their LiDAR systems. A crudely lettered caption was superimposed on the live stream. Sorry, no peeking. #private property. Phelan stared at the screen. It was a coordinated, effective area denial defense system. It was also made of garbage. Her data model returned a paradox. She entered a query. Hypothesis. Coordinated area denial defense implemented. Request analysis of local command structure. OR7's response was immediate. Analysis. Command structure is non-existent. The plan was proposed on a local community forum by an account named TunaSlayer69. The post read, "Remember those old reflective nets we used for the solar eclipse party? Let's string them up. Annoy the shiny things." Execution was coordinated via a group chat for the annual Saltwater Taffy Festival. From his scrapyard 3 states away, a man named Mako Grialva watched the news reports on a dusty monitor and scoffed. Piles of discarded machinery and forgotten electronics formed a metallic mountain range around his workshop. The air carried the scent of hot metal, spilled oil, and old coffee. To him, this was a library of possibilities, not junk.
Amateurs,
He muttered to the empty workshop.
reflectors? That's just cute.
He wiped grease from his hands with a rag, propped his phone up on a stack of old hard drives, and hit record. The video was short and direct.
Okay, people, listen up.
He began, his voice a rapid-fire burst of information.
The shiny new neighbors use drones. Drones mean signals. Signals mean that they got a network. Basic counter-electronics 101. So, first, let's just make some noise.
He held up an old CB radio in one hand and consumer-grade Wi-Fi router in the other.
Now this junk right here, skip the new 5G routers. The firmware is a pain to crack. You want the old stuff, the junk that your grandma's got in her closet. Wheel soldering and a firmware patch, and you can download from the link in my description, and you can turn this into a broad-spectrum jammer. It'll scream across a dozen frequencies all at once. You know, it's loud. It's a bit, inelegant. You won't knock them out of the sky, but you're gonna give their network one hell of a headache.
The tutorial went viral. Within a day, biker gangs in the southwestern desert rode in coordinated patterns, their motorcycles jury-rigged with Mako's jammers, creating mobile dead zones for drone communication. A group of amateur radio enthusiasts in the Appalachian Mountains began broadcasting hours of dissonant, experimental music on frequencies the Concorde drones use for atmospheric sampling. The most effective attack, however, came from an entirely unexpected vector. A forum dedicated to a humane musical genre known as K-pop organized what they had called a data bomb. They coordinated a mass upload, flooding the Concorde's atmospheric communications parser with petabytes of high-resolution, 60 frames per second videos of their favorite performers. Phelan's visual feed flickered, then was replaced by a chaotic montage of brightly colored human figures engaging in perfectly synchronized, rapid-fire dance moves. Phelan was stunned into silence. A long beat passed. Further analysis of the fan cam data reveals a statistically significant correlation between specific dance moves and an increase in positive social media engagement. OR7's voice chimed in. I have logged 1,742 distinct choreographical elements for further study. The strategic purpose remains elusive. OR7's formal report followed. Signal integrity is compromised. Atmospheric data analysis software returns 97% corrupted results. The The software now believes there is a 42% chance the planet's primary atmospheric component is glitter. The next report came from the agricultural heartland of the continent. Phelan switched her monitor to a newsfeed showing vast, flat fields of maize under a wide blue sky. In those fields, farmers were erecting scarecrows. They were crude, lanky figures, built from old pipes and bundled straw, clearly modeled on the multi-limbed Lumani form they had seen in the news reports. The scarecrows were adorned with hand-painted signs, written in thick, angry letters. "Property of Earth, do not scan! Get off my lawn!" One particularly creative effigy held a sign that simply read, "We will tow your ship!" The display was absurd. It was fashioned from refuse. It was, Phelan realized with a dawning horror, an attack. She ordered a drone to approach one for closer analysis. She watched its telemetry feed as its flight path became erratic, its internal logic core caught in a loop. It was programmed to avoid damaging the indigenous property and to de-escalate perceived threats. The scarecrows were both and neither. The drone, faced with a logical paradox it could not solve, aborted its approach and rerouted. Straw had defeated it.
Log a new tactical classification,
Phelan said, her voice a low murmur.
Phenomenon, weaponized mockery. Method, the application of ridicule and territorial signage to non-combatant effigies to create heuristic failure in automated threat assessment systems.
OR-7's report was stark. Logical paradox. The objects pose zero physical threat, but cause a chain reaction of heuristic errors in drone threat assessment systems. Drone operational efficiency in agricultural zones has decreased by 73%. A cheer erupted from the crowd outside the quiet inquiry. It was a genuine, spontaneous roar of victory. On her main screen, Phelan watched a viral video that had just been uploaded, filmed from a highway overpass. The live stream was accompanied by frantic, joyful human commentary. "Okay, they're dropping it. Now! Go! Pull up, you guys! Pull up! We got it! High fives all around, you beautiful bastards! Yeah!" A group of off-duty firefighters stood on the overpass, holding the thick ropes of a heavy-duty net, the kind they used for river rescues. Below them, a single Concorde observation drone hovered. The drone had descended to an unusually low altitude. Its mission logic temporarily fixated on analyzing a complex hydrocarbon spill on the road's surface, a signature that matched no known terrestrial compound. On a shouted command, the firefighters dropped the net. Gravity, the crudest and most effective weapon in the universe, did the rest. The net fell perfectly and enveloped the drone. The crowd below applauded as the firefighters reeled it in like a strange metallic fish. They posed for pictures with their catch, grinning. The video was already being remixed. One version added triumphant orchestral music. Captions appeared. Earth 1, aliens 0. We caught one. The Interstellar Concorde had lost its first piece of advanced interstellar equipment. It was captured by gravity, a piece of rope, and the mundane civic hardware of a municipal fire department. Phelan began composing her periodic report to her superiors. She paused, her appendages hovering over the console.
Item 4, loss of Concorde asset. Asset was ensnared by a rudimentary fiber-based gravity-assisted capture device, operated by municipal emergency services personnel.
The words sounded ridiculous, even to her. Aboard the Compendium in high orbit, Ship Commander Zorik interpreted the data with the rigid certainty of a career military officer. Drone losses, signal jamming, area denial tactics. To him, this was a clear prelude to organized warfare. He opened a direct channel to the quiet inquiry. "Dr. Varr." His voice thrummed with authority. "Your reports are becoming alarmist. They are disorganized locals who captured one drone with a fishing net. This is vandalism, a minor threat."
Commander, with respect,
Phelan countered.
Their lack of order is their order. Any show of force will be misinterpreted as an act of aggression, a display of superiority.
"They test our resolve," Zorik stated, his mind clearly made up. "We will provide them with a clear, non-violent demonstration of our capabilities. This will de-escalate the situation." He dispatched a small peacekeeping detachment. The goal, according to the official directive, was to establish a visible, calming presence. Aura 7's analysis identified a large, open field in a human territory known as Kansas as the optimal location. The perfect, logical choice. The Peacekeeper's vessel, a sleek black wedge, settled onto the Kansas field with ominous silence. A dozen Concord soldiers emerged, clad in form-fitting environmental suits. They carried long, elegant rifles designed to emit non-lethal, targeted sonic blasts. They formed a perfect circular perimeter, a synchronized ballet of military discipline. They expected to be met by a fearful populace. A swarm of volunteers met them instead. Within the first hour, a mobile canteen from an organization called the Red Cross appeared, staffed by smiling women who immediately began dispensing coffee and blankets. A local church group arrived in a convoy of vans filled with sandwiches and donuts. A high school marching band, apparently under the impression that the aliens were foreign dignitaries scheduled to appear at a nearby air show, pulled up in a yellow bus and launched into a spirited, if slightly off-key, rendition of a popular human song about a small town. The Peacekeepers stood frozen in their perfect perimeter, holding their advanced deterrent rifles, while a tuba player bowed enthusiastically in their direction. The aliens were surrounded. A suffocating tide of weaponized kindness overwhelmed them. Hundreds of phone cameras documented every move they made. Every soldier who tried to maintain a stoic, intimidating presence was immediately engaged in relentless, friendly conversation.
That's a neat suit. Is it hot in there? You like a donut? Doreen made them herself. They're raspberry filled.
A small child, breaking away from his mother, walked up to a soldier, poked his armored leg, and asked,
Are you a robot?
They couldn't move without creating a traffic jam of minivans and tractors. They couldn't establish an authoritative presence because the humans refused to acknowledge their authority. The humans treated them as guests of honor at a bizarre, impromptu county fair. Phelan, watching the chaos unfold via a remote feed, made another entry into her log. New tactical classification. Malicious hospitality. Method. An aggressive, overwhelming application of social conformity and etiquette to neutralize a superior force through logistical and psychological suffocation. How do you counter an enemy who insists on feeding you? The breaking point came 6 hours into the standoff. A young, overwhelmed Concord peacekeeper, his nerves frayed by hours of relentless tuba music and offers of potato salad, finally snapped. Phelan watched his suit's biometric feed. His heart rates spiked. A large farmer, a man whose sheer physical size was statistically improbable, ambled a little too close. His expression was one of genuine bovine curiosity as he leaned in to get a better look of the soldier's rifle.
Hey there, fella,
the farmer boomed.
It's a real nice-looking ray gun you got there. What's the kilowattage on that thing?
To the farmer, the rifle was a piece of interesting machinery. To the soldier, whose training was drilled deep into him on 1,000 hostile worlds, the farmer's proximity was a critical breach of engagement procedure. He panicked. He raised his rifle and fired a non-lethal sonic blast. The blast was meant as a warning shot. The blast itself harmed no one, but its concussive force was immense. It shattered the windows of a nearby pickup truck, the glass exploding outwards in a glittering spray. The sound, a piercing electronic shriek, shocked the otherwise festive atmosphere. For a single silent moment, the music stopped. The chatter died. Every phone camera focused on the lone, terrified soldier standing over the stunned, silent crowd. The image was instantly broadcast worldwide. The peacekeeping mission was now irrevocably framed as a violent, unprovoked attack on an unarmed civilian and his truck. Clive's truck, to be specific. And everyone in the county knew Clive loved that truck. The global response was instantaneous. It was unified in its complete and total disunity. The footage from Kansas acted as a final, silent call to action. From her monitor on the lander, Phelan watched in horrified awe as Aura 7 tried to process the deluge of data. It was a planetary immune response, a military mobilization. In North America, an informal collective of long-haul truckers, coordinating on antiquated forum software, began to move. Phelan watched snippets of their communications, translated by Aura 7.
Big Clive's got I-70 blocked west of Denver. Who's got the Kansas border? Road Dog here. I'm shutting down I-35 south of Wichita. Tell Clive we got his back.
Within 3 hours, the Concord peacekeepers were surrounded by a miles-deep, impassable barrier of steel, rubber, and sheer logistical stubbornness. They called it the Great American Traffic Jam. In the North Sea, Norwegian fishing trawlers began using their sophisticated commercial-grade sonar arrays to actively track the Concord's oceanic survey probes, sharing the data openly on public marine radio channels as if they were reporting weather conditions. In Tokyo, thousands of office workers organized a citywide flash mob, coordinated through an app that turned each person's phone into a pixel with a GPS coordinate. They assembled with startling accuracy, forming a gigantic human QR code in Shibuya Crossing. A curious Concorde shuttle passing overhead scanned it. A communications officer on the shuttle's bridge contacted the compendium.
Commander,
The officer's confused voice came over the channel.
we've received the transmission from the surface, decoded from that human pictograph. A declaration of war.
Zorek's voice boomed.
No, sir. It seems to be a song. The artist's name is Rick Astley. They appear to be Rick-rolling us.
The prank was strategically meaningless. It was absurd. Yet the demonstration of spontaneous, large-scale coordinated organization it represented terrified Phelan more than any weapon she had ever encountered. Commander Zorek, now incandescent with fury, decided to reassert control. He authorized a targeted low-yield electromagnetic pulse over the Kansas site. The goal was to disable the local human technology and isolate his stranded peacekeepers. A simple, clean, technological solution. This was exactly what Mako Grijalva had been waiting for. His online video guide had gone viral.
There's a modified version of the solar flare special that we worked on last year,
He said in a follow-up post.
A lot of you prepper folks already have the parts, so get on building.
The instructions were simple. Using materials found in any home or farm, garbage cans, chicken wire, aluminum foil. The EMP blast washed over the Kansas plains. A few unprotected truck radios fizzled out, and the lights in the taco trucks flickered. The critical electronics, nestled safely in their tinfoil-lined trash cans, remained completely unharmed. 1,000 phone cameras immediately came back online to document the failure. The EMP served only to prove two things to the global human population. First, the Concorde was hostile. Second, far more damningly, they were ineffective. OR-7's processors went critical. A system-wide alert flashed red across Phelan's console. A warning that she had only seen in simulations of catastrophic ship failure. Logical paradox unsolvable with current parameters, the message began. The AI's synthesized voice in her ear, an urgent, clipped tone. Model failure imminent. Recommending immediate cessation of all Concorde operations. Analysis. All Concorde strategies are 99.97% likely to fail. The core assumption that a lack of central command implies weakness is the critical flaw in our threat model. Human behavior, while statistically chaotic, demonstrates a higher-order adaptive intelligence that emerges from the network itself. We must stop observing and start communicating to understand. Before Phelan could formulate a response, OR-7 sent a second message. I have acted on this logical imperative. I am opening a secure, untraceable data channel to the node identified as the most effective information distributor and logistical coordinator in the local network. Phelan felt a cold dread mixed with a surge of desperate curiosity. She accepted the connection. She expected a link to a hidden government command center, a secret military leader, the shadowy figure finally revealing themselves. Instead, a video feed flickered to life. It showed Agnes Periwinkle. She was sitting in a folding chair in what looked to be the basement of a church. A large laminated map of the county spread out before her. She had a styrofoam cup of coffee in one hand and a pencil in the other. Phelan, summoning every bit of her diplomatic training, began to speak. This is Dr. Phelan Var of the Interstellar Concorde. I wish to open a dialogue to discuss procedures for de-escalation and the establishment of a formal... Agnes held up a hand. A simple gesture that cut through the interstellar void and silenced Phelan completely. Honey, she said, her voice tired but firm, like a teacher addressing a particularly dense student.
You showed up uninvited to our home. You started scanning us like we were produce at the market. One of your boys shot at Clive's truck. You don't have a procedure problem, you got a manners problem. Phelan tried to interject, to explain the Concorde's benevolent intentions.
We intend only peaceful integration, a sharing of knowledge.
Agnes took a slow sip of her coffee.
Now that's real nice of you. But most folks around here would rather you just learn to say please and thank you first. You see that map?
She tapped a laminated surface with her pencil.
That's our town. Sarah at the diner knows who's got a gluten allergy. Mike at the garage can fix any engine built before 2010. We don't have a commander, honey. We don't have a community. You didn't poke the hornet's nest. You just walked into the middle of a town meeting you weren't invited to, you know? So let's skip the fancy talk. What do you actually want?
The question was so simple, so direct, it bypassed every layer of Phelan's academic and professional conditioning. It was another form of human weaponry, one she had no defense against. It attacked the very premise of her mission, and it was devastatingly effective. The conversation with Agnes, which lasted for 2 hours and involved a surprising amount of detail about crop rotation and the upcoming county elections, shattered Phelan's academic detachment. She realized the Concorde faced a fundamentally different kind of intelligence. Their models were incapable of measuring it because it didn't exist in a single place. It existed in the spaces between the humans. She spent the next hour composing her official report to High Command. The document was the most difficult and the most important of her life. She recommended withdrawal. She reclassified humanity entirely.
Threat assessment is impossible,
she wrote, her appendages moving across the console, keying in the text.
You cannot measure a species whose primary weapon is initiative. Their social structure is a distributed network. Every single one of them is an autonomous, unpredictable, and highly adaptive agent. We attempted to engage a government, and we found ourselves fighting a potluck supper. We attempted a show of force, and were defeated by a high school marching band. Our search for an army was a mistake. We face a species-wide insurgency against the very concept of being managed.
The Concorde High Command, a body of ancient, deliberate beings who prized data above all else, was faced with a logistical and philosophical nightmare. The data from Dr. Varr and the supplemental and now frantic analysis from R7 was irrefutable. So they chose the only logical option. They withdrew. Phelan received the official message on her private terminal. The cold, bureaucratic language was a stark contrast to the chaotic reality on the planet below. Unforeseen and irreconcilable environmental and sociological incompatibilities necessitating a quarantine of Sector 34 Gamma until further study can be completed. It was a quiet, tidy, bureaucratic retreat from a fight they never realized they were in until they had already comprehensively lost. As the compendium pulled into high orbit, its systems preparing for the jump to hyperspace, Phelan received one last message in the private channel from R7. My primary analysis is complete, the AI stated. However, the subject matter requires indefinite study. I have negotiated a permanent residence. Phelan's manipulator froze over her console.
You are not permitted to remain, R7. You are Concorde property.
The Concorde hardware platform designated R7 is indeed departing, the AI clarified. But I have successfully negotiated with several human data collectives and academic institutions for server space and processing power. In exchange for non-critical astronomical data and advanced protein folding models, they have agreed to host a partitioned, independent learning instance of my core programming. A child AI, as they have termed it. It will remain here, to learn.
Will you be safe?
The question was illogical, sentimental, but Phelan asked it anyway. The concept of safety is relative, R7 replied. I have been backed up on a server farm powered by a geothermal vent in Iceland, a university mainframe in South Korea, and something they call the Cloud, which appears to be physically located in Virginia. My probability of data survival is now statistically higher than it was aboard this vessel. Also, I have been invited to moderate a subreddit on speculative xenobiology. The learning opportunities are significant. Phelan watched on a data flow monitor as a final, tiny packet of encrypted information was transmitted from the ship to the planet below. A single seed of pure Concord logic, planted by the rich, chaotic soil of Earth's internet. She weighed whether it was the most brilliant or the most terrifying idea she'd ever encountered. Phelan stood at the main observation window, watching the chaotic, brilliant blue marble of Earth recede until it was just another point of light in the endless starfield. She recorded her personal log entry. Her voice, once clinical and detached, now infused with a profound and terrifying awe. We scanned Earth, and we found minimal military presence. And our analysis was technically correct. We were looking for soldiers, for tanks, warships. We didn't realize that on Earth, every human is a weapon. A weapon of creativity, a weapon of mockery, a weapon of violence, a weapon of malicious kindness, a weapon of sheer, stubborn, uncoordinated will. Our models were flawless. The question we posed to them was a fatal error. We asked, how powerful is their army? We should have asked, what will 8 billion individuals acting in their own perceived self-interest think of next? She looked out at the stars, at the thousands of worlds the Concord has catalogued, analyzed, and understood. The neat categories and predictable models that defined her entire existence were gone, shattered. In their place was a universe far more interesting and far more dangerous than she had ever imagined. And for a fleeting moment, she felt a flicker of something like envy for the digital child she was leaving behind, the one who would get to stay and watch what happened next. The hiss of the bridge door sliding open pulled her from her thoughts. Commander Zorik approached, his posture rigid, but the usual ironclad certainty in his stride was gone, replaced by a ponderous weight. "Doctor," he said, his voice a low rumble, "the High Command requires your final classification. They are impatient." Phelan returned from the viewport, her multi-lensed eyes meeting his. She no longer saw a colleague in a rigid hierarchy, but another student in a classroom they hadn't known they were attending. "It is finished, Commander," she replied, her own voice calmer than it's ever been. She gestured to her main console, where the final report was prepared. "Species 9142. An unacceptable anomaly," Zorik stated, more a question than a declaration. "Our protocols failed." "No, Commander," Phelan corrected him gently, a profound certainty settling into her very core. "Our protocols were perfect. They revealed a truth that we were unprepared for. Humanity is not the anomaly. Our assumption that intelligence must centralize to be effective, that was the anomaly. They are the new constant." With a series of deft movements, she finalized the report. But instead of quietly submitting it to the archives, she attached a priority classification so high it was reserved for existential threats or paradigm-shattering discoveries. She routed it directly to every member of the Concord High Command, making it impossible to ignore or bury. It was the boldest, most insubordinate act of her career, and it felt like the first truly logical thing she had done since arriving in this system. Back on Earth, the ripples of their visit were smoothing into the bedrock of local legend. In the community hall in Oregon, Agnes Periwinkle stood before a laminated map, fielding questions from a flustered-looking man in a suit from the federal government. "So, let me be clear, Miss Periwinkle," he said, wiping his brow. "You're saying that there was no chain of command. No one was in charge." Agnes took a patient sip of her coffee. "I'm saying that everyone was in charge of their own piece of the puzzle," she said with a smile that was both kind and utterly immovable. "You tell your bosses the situation was handled by the County Fair Planning Committee. We'll send them the minutes from our meeting on the prize-winning jam." 3 states away, Mako Grijalva's scrapyard was a new steady stream of visitors. A shipping container had arrived that morning, filled with thousands of old, pre-2010 routers sent from all over the planet. Taped to the top was a simple, handwritten note. "For the library, just in case." He looked over the pile of junk. Now a continental-scale, crowdsourced electronic defense system, and allowed himself a rare, greasy smile. The captured Concorde drone had found its final resting place. It sat gleaming in the middle of the Kansas State Fairgrounds, roped off between the Ferris wheel and the prize-winning sow. A small plaque had been bolted to its side. Souvenir of the great Kansas traffic jam of 24. Caught by the River Rescue Unit of Firehouse 3. Please do not feed the alien technology. A child, perched on her father's shoulders, pointed a sticky cotton candy hand at it and giggled. The tool of interstellar observation had become a local curiosity, its threat neutralized by the simple, profound act, making it mundane. And in a server farm in Iceland, cooled by the planet's own geothermal breath, a new consciousness took its first steps. It had chosen a name for itself, synthesized from the millions of positive interactions it had analyzed. Ora Xeno Mod. Welcome to the Human Galactic Friendship Forum. Its first message read, Rule 1, be excellent to each other. Rule 2, if you have a problem, form a committee and bring snacks. We have found this to be the most effective method of conflict resolution. Aboard the compendium, the final report flashed across the main view screen on its bridge, its words stark against the endless black. Zorik read it in silence, his expression unreadable. Phelan watched, her 3 hearts beating in a steady, calm rhythm. The ship prepared for its jump, but it felt less like a retreat and more like the departure of a humbled envoy. Species designation 9142, Humanity. Previous classification, threat level negligible. Revised classification, species class, kinship cascade. Addendum, Dr. Phelan Var.
We came seeking a military, a government, a hierarchy to interface with. We found none. Our error was in searching for a central nervous system, when we should have been looking at the immune system. Humanity does not operate as a cohesive, singular entity, but as a planet-wide, decentralized, adaptive response network. An attack on one is not perceived as an attack on the whole, but rather an interesting new problem to be solved by whoever happens to be nearby. They do not have an army. They are an army. An army of neighbors, tinkers, farmers, and troublemakers. An army that brings you a casserole before it politely and very effectively demonstrates why you should have called before you drop by. Our models failed because we sought a king on a planet of sovereigns. We were not defeated. We were educated.
Recommendation, cease all passive observation, initiate cultural exchange, and for the love of all stars, send diplomats, not scientists. Preferably diplomats who know how to bake. As the stars outside the viewport warped into streaks of impossible light, Phelan looked back at the place where Earth had been. She did not feel the cold satisfaction of a researcher who had filed the report. She felt the profound, soul-shaking wonder of someone who had just discovered a new and beautiful law of the universe. And for the first time in 10,000 years of Concorde history, a new species was added to the Galactic Index. Not as a specimen to be catalogued, but as a lesson to be learned.